There are fairies in the forest. That's what the old stories say. But the stories don't tell you everything. They don't tell you what happens when a fairy is born without wings. They don't tell you what she steals to make her own. And they never tell you what happens to the children she visits in the night. But I will, because I saw her. It started with Clara. She was 8 years old, lived in a town so small the grocery store shared a roof with the post office, and her house sat at the edge of a forest no one liked to talk about. The trees there were too tall, too quiet. Their branches moved even when the wind didn't. Clara's bedroom window faced the forest. She used to fall asleep to the rustle of leaves, imagining fairies dancing beneath the pines. But then the dreams changed. One night, Clara left her window open, just a crack, enough for the breeze to slip in. It was hot, and she liked the way it felt on her skin. She didn't expect the whispering. At first, she thought it was the trees. Then she thought it was part of a dream. But the whispering had fingers. They touched her hair, her neck, her shoulder blades. When she opened her eyes, the room was empty, but the curtain was swaying. The next morning, Clara told her mother. "There was someone in my room," she said. "A fairy." Her mother laughed as she poured orange juice. "Well, did she leave you sparkles or gold?" Clara shook her head. She didn't have wings. Her mother kissed her forehead. Then she must not be a real one. Clara didn't reply, because something in the fairy's eyes had felt realer than anything she'd ever seen. They weren't made of light or wonder. They were deep, hollow, hungry. The following night, Clara shut her window tight. But her brother's was open. Thomas was only 5. His dreams were always loud, running through fields, jumping off clouds. He slept with a wooden plane under his pillow. Clara checked on him before bed. He was snoring, arms spread wide like he was mid-flight. She didn't hear anything strange, didn't see anything either. But in the morning, Thomas didn't get out of bed. He was breathing, awake, but different. He didn't smile. He didn't move much. He didn't look at her. When Clara helped him dress, she pulled his shirt over his head and gasped. 2 bruises, deep ones, one on each shoulder blade, like something had been plucked out. That night, Clara didn't sleep. She sat by Thomas's bed with a flashlight and her father's old pocket knife. She waited, and when the clock hit 2:17 a.m., the room shifted. The air grew cold. The shadows thickened. And then, she was there, at the foot of the bed, tall, slender, not quite human. Her skin was gray and glistening, like wet stone. Her limbs were too long, her fingers jointless. Her eyes were black, glassy, motionless. And her back was scarred. Long, pale scars, where wings should have been. Clara raised the flashlight and clicked it on. The fairy didn't flinch. She tilted her head and stared at Clara with a softness that made the girl's chest tighten with dread. Then she spoke. Her voice sounded like dry leaves being crushed underfoot. "You're not dreaming, Clara." Clara's hands trembled. "What do you want?" The fairy drifted closer. "I want to fly." She opened her chest, literally opened it, with thin fingers prying at the skin like it was a zipper. Inside were wings, layered, folded, pressed together. Dozens, hundreds, all different. Some were soft and pink, others leathery and dark. Some glittered like butterfly wings. Some hung limp, as if freshly stolen. Each wing had a different texture, a different shape, a different memory. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Where did you get them?" she whispered. The fairy touched Thomas's cheek. "From dreamers." "Why him?" "He dreamed of flying." "You took that from him." The fairy didn't blink. "He doesn't need it anymore." Clara backed away. "You're a monster." "No," the fairy said softly. "I'm a collection." She turned to leave, then paused. "But you," she said without looking back. "You dream of flight with your eyes open. That's rare." The light flickered, and then she was gone. The next morning, Thomas was worse. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the ceiling, blinking slow and hollow. Clara told her mother again. "There's a fairy taking dreams. She's stealing wings." Her mother frowned. "Sweetheart, it's just your imagination. You're scaring your brother." Clara clenched her fists. It wasn't her imagination. It was real. And if no one else would believe her, then she'd stop the fairy herself. Because she knew one thing now. The fairy wasn't finished. She hadn't come for Thomas. She'd come for her. Clara didn't sleep for 2 nights. Not out of fear. Out of purpose. The memory of the fairy's chest cracked open like an ancient music box, spilling its terrible secrets, etched itself behind her eyes. Wings. So many of them. Some pristine. Some shredded. All stolen. She had nearly become part of that collection. Thomas still wouldn't speak. His bruises had faded, but something had left with them. He stared at the ceiling now when he should have been playing. He flinched when birds flew by the windows. He no longer dreamed. Clara couldn't tell her parents. They'd never believe her. Instead, she made a plan. There was only one place she could turn to, one person who knew more about the forest than anyone else. Old Miss Lark. She lived at the edge of the woods in a twisted house covered in wind chimes and bones. Everyone said she was mad. Children whispered that she fed squirrels her teeth. But Clara had once seen Miss Lark speaking to a crow like it was her child. And the crow listened. Clara waited until dusk. She wrapped herself in her thickest sweater, packed a flashlight, and slipped a pair of dull scissors into her sock, just in case. Then she snuck out the back door while her parents argued over bedtime. The walk through the woods was quiet. Too quiet. No insects. No breeze. Not even the whisper of leaves. As if the trees were holding their breath. Miss Lark's house appeared from behind a thicket of thorn brush, tall, leaning slightly, and dripping with rusted trinkets that clinked in slow, eerie rhythms. A pair of white feathers hung above the door. Fresh. Clara knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder. The door creaked open. "Come in, child," said a voice from the shadows. "I've been waiting." Clara hesitated, then stepped inside. The house smelled like pine tar and lavender. 100 glass jars lined the shelves, some filled with herbs, others with stranger things. A rabbit skull, a small doll with pins in its feet, a single, preserved bat wing. Miss Lark sat in a rocking chair, her long gray hair twisted with beads and dried petals. "You've seen her," she said, not asking. Clara nodded. "She took something from my brother." Miss Lark sighed. "She always starts with the quiet ones." Clara stepped closer. "Who is she?" The old woman looked at her with clouded eyes. "Her name is lost. Some say she was once the first fairy born without wings. Others say she was cursed by the Moon Queen for flying too close to the stars. Whatever the truth, she became the wingmaker. She said she'd be the last," Clara whispered. Miss Lark nodded. "She's building a perfect set, a final pair. When complete, she believes they'll carry her beyond this world. Past death, past heaven, past rules." Clara's voice trembled. "She said my dreams were of the sky." "Then she'll return for you," Miss Lark said. "Soon." Clara tightened her fists. "I don't want to be next." "No," the old woman said softly. "You want to stop her." She rose, bones creaking, and shuffled to a cabinet. She opened a drawer and pulled out a bundle wrapped in black cloth. Inside was a mirror, round, cracked down the middle, its silver frame carved with wings. "This is a dream glass," Miss Lark said. "It shows the shape of your dream. Not what you hope for, not what you wish, but what your soul calls." Clara took it with shaking hands. The mirror shimmered, and then she saw it. A vast sky, her tiny form rising above the clouds, laughing, soaring on shimmering wings, not feathered, not fairy but hers. A dream of freedom, of weightlessness, and beneath it, something darker. A shadow of herself, buried in roots, her back torn open. Miss Lark looked away. "She's marked you now. What do I do?" The woman's fingers tapped the wooden table. "She doesn't take wings randomly. She waits until you dream. If you can trap her inside your dream, within the space between sleep and waking, you might cut her from it. Sever her from the dreams she feeds on." Clara blinked. "You want me to lure her?" "Yes, but not without a tether." She opened a small box and pulled out a thin chain with a pendant shaped like a moth. "This was mine," Miss Lark said, "from when I was a child dreamer. It anchors you. Bite at the moment you feel her presence in the dream. It'll shock you awake, but only once." Clara took it, her fingers brushing the cold metal. "What if it doesn't work?" Miss Lark's eyes grew sad. "Then you'll join the others in her chest." That night, Clara lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She wore the moth charm around her neck. Her window was cracked, just enough to tempt. She closed her eyes and let herself dream. The wind came first. Cool. Strange. Then she was above the trees, the sky spreading wide like an open sea. Her arms stretched, wings unfurled, soft, glowing, silver-white. She laughed. She twirled, but she wasn't alone. The clouds thickened, and then she heard the fluttering. Wrong. Wet. Too many wings. The fairy rose from the clouds like a corpse from a deep lake. Her face was serene. Her hands bled from old stitches. Her chest was open again, wings flapping inside like trapped birds. "You dream so sweetly," she said. Clara tried to fly faster, but the dream thickened, like syrup pulling her down. "Your wings would finish my set," the fairy whispered. "Just one more. Only one." Clara reached for the pendant, but the fairy grabbed her. Her fingers dug into Clara's shoulders, and Clara screamed, felt her dream begin to tear. She bit the charm. Flash. She woke up gasping, back in bed. Safe. The room was cold, her window wide open, and in the corner a single feather. Not white, not black, but gray, trembling gently in the moonlight. The gray feather sat on Clara's windowsill for 3 days. She didn't touch it, didn't move it, didn't even breathe, too close to it. It pulsed sometimes like it was alive, beating gently with some silent rhythm. A heartbeat that wasn't hers. Thomas stared at it once, then walked away and wouldn't return to her room. Miss Lark's moth charm now hung tightly around Clara's neck, tucked beneath her shirt like a hidden weapon. She hadn't dreamed since that night, not the way she used to. The air in her room felt thinner now, like the sky itself had become cautious. But the forest had grown louder. The crows outside had vanished. The trees no longer whispered. They watched, and Clara wasn't the only one who noticed. It was in school where she first heard someone else speak the fairy's name, though not aloud. A boy named Elijah sat in the back row of class. Always quiet, always drawing. Today, Clara noticed something different. He was sketching wings. Not pretty ones. Missing ones. The paper showed silhouettes of children, some asleep, some weeping, all with open scars where wings should have been. Clara sat beside him during lunch without asking. "You've seen her," she said quietly. Elijah froze. Then, without looking up, he said, "My sister dreamed of being a bird." Clara waited. "She flew in every dream," he whispered. "So one night, she didn't come back." "She died?" Clara asked gently. "No," Elijah said, eyes hollow. "She's still here, breathing, but not awake. Her eyes are open sometimes, but she doesn't move. She just lies there, like she's trapped under ice." Clara's stomach twisted. That was it, the end result. The fairy didn't kill. She emptied, turned dreamers into husks. "What did she take?" Clara asked. Elijah looked down at his drawing. Everything that made her light. That night, Clara took the gray feather to Miss Lark. The old woman's hands shook when she saw it. "She's begun the final stitch," she said. Clara's skin prickled. "What does that mean?" Miss Lark laid the feather in a bowl of black salt. "The fairy doesn't just want to fly. She wants to undo the sky. Her dream is to unmake the boundary between worlds, to climb into the place where dreams are born and take it for herself." "How does a feather do that?" "This one is not from a bird. It's from a child, probably your brother, or one like him. She left it behind to anchor herself to you." "Like a tracking spell?" "Worse," Miss Lark said. "She's making you part of her." Clara's mouth went dry. "Can you remove it?" Miss Lark shook her head. "No, but you can return it." Clara frowned. "You want me to give it back?" "No, I want you to bury it where she was born." The room fell silent. "And where's that?" Miss Lark's eyes turned glassy. "In the mirror between dreams." Clara didn't sleep that night. Instead, she prepared. She filled her pockets with small things. A piece of string from Thomas's baby blanket, the drawing Elijah gave her, a needle Miss Lark had dipped in iron and honey, the moth charm now cracked, and the feather wrapped in wax paper. When midnight came, she climbed into bed and invited the dream. This time, it welcomed her like an old friend. The world she entered was gray and endless. No sky, no ground, just mist, Clara walked for what felt like hours, each step echoing with distant laughter and sobs, like every child who had ever dreamed was trapped just beyond sight. Then, up ahead, a mirror. Tall, framed in bone and bark. She stepped closer and gasped. Her reflection didn't match. In the mirror, Clara had wings. Not beautiful, soft ones, but stitched, jagged wings, sewn from scraps. One glinted with glass. Another fluttered unnaturally, twitching like a dying moth. She reached out. The mirror reached back. And the fairy stepped out. But not fully, only her face and arms, and a chest that opened again like a cabinet of horrors. The wings inside buzzed softly, like insects in a hive. "You've brought me a gift," she said, eyeing the feather. Clara nodded, and something to ask in return. The fairy tilted her head. "A trade?" "No," Clara whispered. "A burial." She held up the feather, and stabbed it with the iron-dipped needle. It shrieked. Not the feather. The fairy. She reeled back, the wings in her chest flapping violently. The mirror behind her cracked, lines spreading across the surface like ice fracturing. "You think that hurts me?" she hissed. "You think breaking my anchor will stop what I've built?" Clara stood firm. "I don't care what you've built. I just want you gone." The fairy smiled sadly. "But you're part of me now. My wings are almost ready." Then she stepped fully from the mirror. And Clara ran. The dreamscape twisted behind her. No longer mist, now a forest. A crooked one. The trees hunched like giants with broken necks. The sky was stitched together with red thread. The ground pulsed beneath her feet. The fairy followed, slower than she should have been, as if weighed down by the wings on her back. Wings that dragged behind her like shadows with bones. Clara reached a clearing and stopped. In the center stood a child. Not Thomas, not Elijah's sister, but herself, younger, smiling, floating a few inches above the ground, innocent and full of light. The fairy paused. "This is where you began," Clara whispered. "My first dream," the creature said. "Before I woke up in pieces." Clara stepped aside. The younger version of herself reached for the fairy and embraced her. Not with fear, not with hate, with sadness, and the fairy began to crack. Her skin splintered like porcelain. Her wings sagged. And then she screamed, one final time, before exploding into dust. Clara woke up gasping. The feather was gone. So was the mirror. And in Thomas's room he was laughing, playing, dreaming. Clara thought it was over. The gray feather had vanished. The fairy shattered. Thomas was smiling again, his laughter echoing through the house like sunlight finally reaching old shadows. But peace in stories like this is never more than an illusion stitched tight to lull you into sleep. And Clara, though tired, wasn't sleeping anymore. Miss Lark warned her. "You cut the puppet," she said, fingers tight around her teacup, but the hand inside may still be moving. Clara didn't understand. Not then. Not until the other children began to change. It started with Elijah. One moment, he was sketching dragons in the corner of art class. The next, he was staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. When Clara asked what was wrong, he whispered, "I don't remember how to dream anymore." Then he dropped his pencil and walked out of the room. They found him hours later, sitting in the woods, perfectly still. Eyes open, not blinking, breathing barely. His sister had become a husk. Now he had two. And then it spread. Mia Jansen, Declan Rhodes, Sarah Kay, all once bright-eyed dreamers, now blank and motionless. All children who used to talk about flying, or running on clouds, or dancing in the stars. All stolen, without any sign of a fairy returning. Clara returned to Miss Lark's cottage. The door was already open. Inside, the house was darker than usual. The candles flickered with violet flames. The bones above the hearth rattled like they were shivering. "I thought I stopped her," Clara said. Miss Lark didn't respond at first. She was hunched over a bowl, stirring something black and shimmering like oil. "You stopped one shape of her," the old woman said. "But the wing maker, she's older than memory." Clara's stomach turned. "She's still alive. She was never alive in the way we understand. She's a hunger that dreamed itself into being. And when you broke the mirror, you only shattered her reflection." Clara's voice dropped. "Then what did I see?" Miss Lark finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her face was stone. You saw the version of her your mind could survive. Clara took a step back. She's still inside them, Miss Lark whispered. Feeding slower, smarter, no longer stealing wings. Now she steals what wings grow from, the dream itself. That night, Clara heard tapping. Not at her window. At her mirror. She'd covered it since the last dream. But now it pulsed faintly under the blanket, as if light were pressing against it from the other side. She uncovered it, and saw nothing. No face. No wings. Just herself. Except her reflection smiled. She hadn't. Then it leaned forward, close to the glass. Its mouth moved. Clara pressed her ear to the mirror. A voice slithered through, soft as ash. They never stop dreaming, even when their eyes are open. The reflection lifted its shirt. Her back bore wings. Not hers, but ones Clara had seen before. Wings from other children. Sewn, broken, and mismatched, fluttering faintly. And then, the reflection blinked. Once. Twice. And became Clara again. She didn't sleep after that. Instead, she walked. To the forest. To the one place she hadn't dared go before. The hollow nest. Miss Lark had mentioned it once, in a whisper laced with fear. Where the wingmaker's bones were set to rest. Where the first wings were made. No adult dared step near it. But Clara wasn't a child anymore. Not after all she'd seen. The path was hidden beneath the roots of a weeping oak. She crawled through tunnels of bark and stone until she emerged in a clearing bathed in moonlight that didn't feel real. There at the center stood a great tree. Dead. Hollow. Blackened like it had been struck by lightning. Its trunk was split open, and inside were feathers. Thousands of them. Not floating. Writhing. They twisted and turned like worms. Feathered and soft. Whispering in dozens of tiny voices. Let us go. Take us back. She wears us still. Clara stepped inside. The air was thick. Breathing hurt. Every feather touched her skin like a breath, like a whimper. They clung to her clothes, her hair, her soul. And then, at the heart of the nest, she saw it. A cocoon, woven from wings. Shimmering slightly. It pulsed like a chrysalis about to break. Inside, something shifted. Not fully formed, but familiar. It was her. Sleeping. Mouth parted. Eyes fluttering. And just behind her, shadows of other Claras, all whispering, all mouthing things she couldn't hear. As Clara stepped closer, the cocoon trembled. One of the shadows turned. Its eyes were hollow. It looked at her and screamed. The cocoon cracked. Clara grabbed the needle from her pocket, the one Miss Lark had dipped in iron and honey. She slashed the air, the cocoon hissed, and the shadows retreated. The feathers recoiled. The tree groaned. She stabbed the needle into the base of the cocoon. It burst. Light poured out. Not golden, not silver, but memory. Suddenly, Clara remembered every dream she had ever had. The one where she flew over a sea of stars. The one where she danced with her mother, long before the illness. The one where Thomas called her his hero. The one where her reflection didn't smile on its own. And then silence. The hollow nest collapsed. The feathers disintegrated. And the voice, that dreadful, whispering, endless voice, was gone. Clara woke up at home. In bed. Thomas was sleeping peacefully. No bruises. No silence. The mirror no longer pulsed. And the moth charm, now warm, had mended itself. But just before dawn, Clara opened her closet and saw a single, small feather on the floor. This time it was not gray. It was white. The white feather lay still at the bottom of Clara's closet. It wasn't pulsing. It wasn't warm. It wasn't stitched with shadow or soaked in nightmare. It was perfect. Too perfect. Clara didn't touch it. She knew what it meant. The hollow nest had collapsed. The cocoon had shattered. The fairy, or what remained of her, had been unmade. But something had survived. And this time, it wasn't trying to hide. She returned to Miss Lark's cottage at first light. The door was wide open. Miss Lark wasn't there. The fire had long since gone cold. The wind chimes had stopped moving. And above the mantel, where dried herbs once hung, Clara saw something new, a bundle of white feathers, braided together with silver thread. Below it a note, ink faded, torn at the corners. Even nightmares dream of peace. She turned it over. Scrawled in small, shaking letters. You are not the last. At school, Elijah hadn't returned. His name had been taken off the attendance board. Others had gone too, not missing, just altered. They still walked the halls, still smiled, still spoke. But Clara knew. They were only echoes now, reflections with no depth. And then, one afternoon, Clara saw a girl standing outside the school gate. Alone. New. Hair the color of frost. Skin pale as moonlight. Her eyes were pitch black. She watched the children laughing on the playground, her face unreadable. Clara approached slowly. The girl looked at her and smiled. Not cruelly, not kindly, just knowingly. I had a dream last night, the girl whispered. Clara's throat tightened. What was it about? I was flying, but not with wings. She pointed to her shadow, stretched long behind her. With that. And then she walked away. That night, Clara returned home and stood in front of the mirror. She uncovered it. No flickering. No fairy. Just her reflection. But when she looked into her own eyes, she saw the truth she had feared all along. Something had been left inside her. Not a piece of the fairy. A seed. Not evil. Not monstrous. Just waiting. For a new dream. For a new shape. For a reason to fly. She held a white feather in her hand and stepped into her backyard, where the trees no longer whispered warnings, only silence. A warm wind passed through the grass, lifting the feather gently from her palm. It hovered for a moment, then drifted away into the sky. Clara watched until it disappeared, and then she smiled, because she finally understood. The fairy hadn't been born evil. She had been a dream too bright to belong in this world. Too much hope, too much hunger, too much sky in her soul. Clara had been fighting to stop her. But maybe she was always becoming her.